Good space time, y'all. In this episode of the Citizen Cosmos podcast, I spoke to Sam Hart, strategy lead at Interchain Foundation, author of the Atom 2.0 white paper, and researcher. We discussed the future of blockchain intercommunications, art, ethics, Atom 2.0, reserve assets, councils, DAOs, governance, market flows, validators, and a bit of household chemistry, of course. The idea is about expansion, the idea is about things, and it looks like in nature it's always about that. It's always about boom, boom, more, bigger, more knowledge, more expansion. And that seems that the way that blockchains work.
If you are going to publish your genetic data, you have to think about the impact that that has on your relatives. When you're talking about like the creation of new software products, it's really hard to specify and automate that effectively.
Definitely, I know what you mean about software products. I recall when we were launching in 2016, the first ICO we were doing in Eastern Europe, and it was a big pain in the ass.
The financial crisis was also the kind of catalyst for things like Bitcoin as well.
Before we rock it off into our next episode, here are some news from the sponsor of this episode, the Cyber Congress DAO. The foundation has started its delegations policy for validators on the Bostrom blockchain, and the Space Pussy network was launched, with 96% of its supply to be dropped to various Cosmos ecosystem chains. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Citizen Cosmos podcast. I have with me Sam Hart today, one of the authors of the Atom 2.0 white paper, and not only. Sam, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Can you, in your own words, would you like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and what you're currently working on?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, my name is Sam Hart. I've been working at the Interchain Foundation, specifically the subsidiary of the Interchain Foundation, Interchain GmbH, for about 3 years. I was the first hire at Interchain GmbH after the Tendermint engineering team moved over and the GmbH was formed. And my kind of mandate when I joined was basically to glue the ecosystem back together. At that time, the Cosmos Hub had launched, but IBC was not shipped. And there was still a couple major milestones that needed to be hit before the full technology stack was ready. And after it was ready, we need to kind of kickstart growth in the ecosystem. So I've done kind of a little bit of everything at the Interchain Foundation. I ran the grants program. I did investments on behalf of the ICF. I did a whole bunch of product work. I had a big focus on governance and DAOs, so brought a number of teams into the ecosystem, including Haifa, and we kind of worked to revamp the Cosmos Hub forum. Talked to different teams about joining the Cosmos ecosystem, did various kind of facets of BD, a lot of connecting and coordinating and just kind of making sure that work was scoped and the pieces all fit together. And then that there was kind of like context between the many, many different core teams. And yeah, about 6 months ago, we felt like we hit some kind of inflection point where Cosmos was really starting to pick up steam. And there were more and more people coming into the ecosystem. And there was kind of this positive feedback loop happening. And at that point, I was assigned to work on the Cosmos Hub because that had been a bit neglected for a while. And it really is a kind of cornerstone of the ICF's strategy. And it's really important for the ecosystem. It's the primary funder of public goods right now. And it has a kind of symbolic importance. And as many listeners to this podcast will know, it was kind of unclear what it was and what it was supposed to do. So spent the last 6 months talking to as many people as I could, kind of synthesizing, refining, incorporating new ideas, throwing out other ideas. And so I was kind of a coordinator, a nexus point for the creation of this Atom 2.0 paper. I'm by no means the sole author. It is really there's so many voices that have kind of come in to contribute to that. But I was one of the primary synthesizers and people who were kind of pushing that process forward.
Would you say that what you do can be referred to as ecosystem development?
Yeah, my title right now is Cosmos Hub Strategy Lead, but prior to that, I didn't really have a title, actually, for better or worse. It was just kind of make sure Cosmos is successful. whatever that may be. And my lens and kind of strategic framework is very much like from an ecosystem level.
I think the internet is a magical place and you can find a lot of information about a person. So, for all the listeners out there, Sam is definitely being very shy about what he does and the amount of things he does for the Cosmos ecosystem, because the amount of things I have to ask you about that I've written down here is like hundreds and hundreds of them. And it's not just the Cosmos ecosystem, to be honest. There's just a lot of things you do in blockchain, which is really cool, in my opinion. But before we get to any of them, you mentioned that you were the first hire of the GmbH ICF, right? Is that the one in Berlin, the office they had in Berlin?
Yes, exactly.
Some of our listeners know, but our very first episode was recorded in that office. It was with Gavin online, but yeah, it was right in the office when during COVID, and there was no one there. It was just me, Anna, and the girl who was working on as administrator, and yeah, it was funny. Sam, I have a lot of questions for you, but let's start with some of the easy ones. Considering like when you go online and you start to look what you do, and you can see that you have a lot of research work, you do a lot of R&D, sorry, work, a lot of implementary work, implementer, whatever is the word is here, work. What is your blockchain story though? How did you, because I was trying to trace like your blockchain origin to how it began and what was the first shitcoin you bought, but it doesn't say that online. So I'm curious, how did you get pilled?
Yeah, so my academic background is in chemical physics. I started doing protein folding research when I was in college. So I got kind of protein folding is a really interesting domain because it's basically a kind of combination of computer simulation and I learned how to program through that, and like thermodynamics, which is like very kind of statistically driven. So I had a relatively strong statistics background. Both of those things have kind of like carried forward in subsequent work. After college, I wanted to move to New York, and I got a job doing genomics research, also computational, also statistically driven. So I was doing like high throughput sequencing and machine learning analysis on human genomes. There's kind of a whole saga there that I won't go into, but learned a lot about how kind of nature is kind of driven forward and how like the human body as an ecosystem functions. And then kind of midway through that, my career as a scientist, a couple things happened. One, on the side, I was actually running an art magazine. It was kind of art and technology. I moved to New York right around the time of Occupy Wall Street. And so there was this kind of like group of kind of politically minded artists and activists that I was very connected to. And that had a big impact on my ideology and my interests. And I did a number of projects for them, with them, and edited and helped them kind of push their projects forward. The financial crisis was also the kind of catalyst for things like Bitcoin as well. So I see these as really kind of parallel developments, like the kind of Occupy Wall Street branch and the kind of motivation behind things like Bitcoin, or really that the kind of catalyst that allowed those to be kind of adopted and like a substantive community to form around them. So I kind of got involved in a little bit of both while I was in New York. And interestingly enough, those kind of activist artist communities and the Bitcoin communities had like certain crossover points. And that's where I kind of found myself like most interested. So I worked on a number of projects that would eventually become like ICOs effectively. And I was helping them kind of with their economic modeling, system design, and helping them write their white papers. And I just had a lot of fun doing that. So for several years, I was basically like working two jobs. I was kind of like in the lab doing my research. And then, in the evenings, I would kind of work on these other projects, and eventually got a full-time job offer at an organization in Berlin, and used that as an opportunity to kind of like make a break with my research and move abroad. And that's kind of my entry into crypto, like really full-time. That project kind of quickly decentralized and kind of dissolved. And so I kind of moved back into doing consulting work. And then when the pandemic started, Billy Rennekamp, who's one of my closest friends in Berlin, he was one of the Tendermint employees and had moved to the GmbH. And he asked me to join Interchain GmbH, and the rest is history.
I knew you were going to say that. No, I think everybody knew you were going to say that. I'm joking. To be honest, Billy is amazing. Like we had an episode with Billy. I think one of the most obscure episodes. A conversation was like, woo, it was good. I liked it. It was really a long time ago.
One of my favorite humans, period.
Billy's cool. Billy's cool. I love it. Man, so many things. I keep writing notes when you talk, and I don't know which part of them to go for. Let's go this way. Well, I know that you worked for Foam, by the way. Well, at least so does the internet say. And if it says on the internet, it must be true. So
Yeah, that was the first white paper I worked on, basically.
Aha, because I can definitely say that for me, as somebody who is interested in R&D a lot and in communication, and I see blockchains as a communication tool, regardless of whether they're digital nations or not. They're a communication tool, and it's interesting. Foam is all about the proof of time and proof of location, sorry, and the time mechanism that is there in build there is amazing. And I was just curious because you did work for them and you did say you took part and participate in writing the white paper. Could you share your views on the future, maybe, of how blockchains will intercommunicate for you? Not necessarily IBC, just I'm talking about how you see it as a big picture, because I think those things connect. But even, I don't know, I want to know your thoughts.
Maybe for the listeners, I can just say a word about foam. So, like you're saying, the primary kind of value prop was this proof of location, which you can think of it as an alternative to GPS, but it was kind of bootstrapped through a mesh network of low power, wide area network transceivers. Super cool project. They're still working on it. It's been kind of a slow process because the technical design is just extremely complex. There's custom hardware, kind of cutting edge, low latency, like triangulation calculations that need to be produced. And I just saw that they had a prototype zone that has been bootstrapped, which I'm really excited about. So I'm very interested in crypto projects that kind of touch the real world like that. Maybe I'll say one thing that I thought was so cool about this project that ended up in the paper. But so the idea is that you can create these, if you have like 4 nodes, physical nodes in space, you can do these triangulations between them and get their kind of relative position to one another. And then you can kind of, if you have 2 neighboring zones, then you can kind of look at the overlap between them and then kind of build this like contiguous location based network. But one of the coolest things is that you have this perimeter where you have provable location, and you can basically insert, or you can basically create an address in a location that doesn't yet have a node, and allow a new node to be set up and mine network activity. So there's this kind of methodology by which you could expand the mesh network. So I thought that was just like totally mind blowing. I hope they actually go for that at some point. But I think it shows the power of these kind of incentive technologies, and particularly as they touch the real world, like you can start to build out new infrastructure and kind of incentivize services or resources that are being offered in specific domains. So I see that as something that's like we're definitely going to see in the future. And there's this kind of compounding effect. Like once you have, nodes in specific locations, or, the ability to layer on specific assurances, like that allows you to kind of bootstrap one type of trust from another type of trust. And so I think there's going to be a kind of multiplication effect that happens there.
It's funny that you mentioned it, because before that I'm talking about the effects and the communication, because you mentioned art, and that art for you was like a big connection and it's a big thing for you, because it is for me too. And it's interesting, in cyber they have this like thing called the brain, which is it's just a way to show what links the person's account created, and it shows like an image of those links. Nothing to do with cyber here, but I was talking with there's a place here in Madeira where I'm located, an art place, which I help a little bit sometimes. And like we have, and yeah, and I was showing them, like out of curiosity, we're having this conversation, and I was showing them those pictures of a brain, and they don't have anything to do with technology, these guys. Like they're, and the first thing when you ask, what do you think it is? The answer is obvious. Oh, this is like a neuron cell network. I'm just trying to say that art and communication And I know that you mentioned genes before as well. And, it says, I'm sorry, I'm not religious and I'm sorry if I will offend anyone, but it says, God created humans in his eyes. Well, we are the God, computers is our humans. We have created them in our image. And of course they resemble, and of course it's about art. Of course it's all like a huge connection for me. And just like, bam, and I don't know, I connect a lot to what you say. That's what I'm trying to say. It's resonances a lot. I also noticed you had like a scuttlebutt contact and on one of your websites, which is not everybody has that, and it's unusual. Do you use it a lot?
I used to use it a bunch. I haven't recently just because I've been super busy. And there's also a bit of churn in the like network clients that they use. But the community there is really unique and I've really enjoyed time on there. And I think that the protocol architecture is extremely elegant. I'm just a big fan of the design of the network.
I'm curious if you're familiar with Orbit as well, by the way.
Yep. I know some folks at Urbit, and there's a lot of similarities for sure. And I've also played around with Urbit.
I mean, the reason I'm trying to get in all of that is, to be honest, is it's all about communication. I know you had some work as well on singularity. I was going to ask you about singularity because I saw that you were writing about like biometrical data onto blockchain. I think I found the work that you did, which you were talking about, and I was curious on whether like you think that some of the modern projects or today's blockchain projects, what they try to do is to say, oh, let's say, and it's again about communication, let's take some DNA data or whatever, put it on a blockchain, and then let's get on with it. Now, I'm curious about your thoughts on this, and I'm curious of whether you think that this kind of thing is acceptable or that's the opposite. It's something that's going to lead us into a wrong direction.
I have some pretty specific views on this, I guess. I mean, I've worked with PHI, patient data, so I've handled like human genomes, and it's a bit of a tricky area. So it's obviously intensely personal. If you, and just to kind of illustrate this, like if there are genetic markers that are indicators for the heritability of alcoholism, for instance, or depression, and I'm pretty strongly against advertisers getting that information and doing targeted ads against that kind of profile. But at the same time, we shed DNA all the time, everywhere. So it's kind of like universally available in some sense. I think there's like a care that needs to be taken with this data, and it's kind of on us as a society to manage that data in a way that's humane. More than that, if you are going to publish your genetic data, you have to think about the impact that that has on your relatives effectively, because that contains a significant amount of information about your parents, your siblings, your children. And so it's not even a personal, like it goes beyond a personal choice. It's actually, you're making a choice about, people that you're related to as well. So again, that kind of like adds to the complexity of the problem. I am pretty against unilaterally publishing, genome data on blockchain. I did work with an artist who was actually interested in, he published his own genome. But one of the first things that we had a conversation was like, okay, who is this impacting? You should have a conversation with your family and making sure that you're getting consent from them before doing so. And the whole project was kind of about that tension and the kind of complexity of working with biometric data. I don't know if that was like a clear, concise answer to your question, but be that as it may, it's there's like a lot to unpack there.
I understand. I do have a point where I want to bring it to Atom 2.0. It is going to be a tricky point to bring it, but I'm flowing there. I'm trying to get your views on certain things and then to ask you the question. I'm cheeky like that. But I did say a little bit. I have to be devil's advocate a little bit. But no, but to be honest, everything we're talking about now, it's not about devil's advocate. It's about things that, in my opinion, make up values that we act upon. And those values, a lot of the reasons why the podcast that we do is about the people and not about the projects is because, well, we want people to understand what is going on. And if blockchains are about communication, if art is about communication, if this is all about communication, then we need to communicate. And if we need to communicate, we want to understand what are the values behind the person, so we understand how they communicate and how they will communicate. And this is kind of like where, okay, I'm still going to ask you about other things if you don't mind, but like, I do want to ask you about one thing about Atom 2.0 and communication. I guess one of the biggest arguments against Atom 2.0 that I've seen so far, and it's not an argument that diminishes the good things it offers, not at all. But it's an argument about communication specifically, and it's about the creation of the treasury, and it's about the creation of a specific, let's call it a multisig. In communication, in expansion, and like I know we didn't talk about singularity, we didn't talk about like all those things, but the idea is about expansion, the idea is about things, and it looks like in nature it's always about that. It's always about boom boom, more, bigger, more knowledge, more expansion. And it seems that the way the blockchains work, we have like a network, and it expands, it wants more knowledge, and the more it gets, the more value it gets, Metcalfe and blah blah blah. So one of the biggest arguments, like coming back to the question now, sorry for making it so long, is the creation of those committees. And what I want to understand is, it seems that for somebody who's so concentrated on communication like yourself and all the R&D work that you do, it seems that that's a reversal. And I want to get inside your head here, if it's possible, to understand why. Can you explain in your own words why you believe that this reversal is needed in this case, and why it's more efficient than us being a chain and deciding things as a non-governance chain? If you could, of course, if it makes sense at all what I'm saying, and if you could, and sorry for being so long.
No, I think I get the question. The paper tries to structure itself in like kind of an argumentative form. It's basically like, okay, here's where we're at today. We're kind of building this secure scaling platform that's like interchain security, liquid staking. Like that allows us to build applications that like are able to interact with other applications in the IBC network. So that's kind of like status quo. That's what we have today. And the purported objective is to turn Atom into this interchain reserve asset and to house the kind of core R&D process and security process around like the ecosystem on the hub. So that would be Tendermint and the SDK, and there's real kind of organizational engineering development processes that we want to make a home for on the Cosmos Hub. Those are all kind of like under the umbrella of the ICF right now, and the objective is to really make it so that like the ecosystem is autonomous. It's not like controlled by the ICF. So there is some existing process and organizational structure there already. There's a team that's building Tendermint. There's a team that's building the SDK. There's a team that's starting to do the R&D process around the scheduler and whatnot. And in order for those kind of artifacts to be produced, they need people. They need labor and resources. Moreover, in order to kind of deploy Atom as this reserve asset, it takes work and capital to kind of allocate and create deal structures and to kind of like get it into the hands or the treasuries of other projects. So that's kind of the problem that's being solved for, is like, okay, we know that we have entities, that we need entities, and we need to somehow make them accountable to the chain and to the Cosmos Hub community. And there needs to be there needs to be a balance, because Tendermint, for instance, Tendermint is not owned by the Cosmos Hub. That is a community project. And we want to like invite that team to make a home on the Cosmos Hub because it's the best place to work, because it's going to be the best place for them to to kind of produce their product and get the resources that they need. And so Tendermint is kind of a guest in the house of the Cosmos Hub in some sense. So it's not like the Cosmos Hub can or should be able to kind of mandate every facet of the Tendermint like work process, because this is, it's a public good and there's a lot of stakeholders kind of involved in that process. There needs to be kind of a careful checks and balances system that balances like both the ecosystem needs around specific products and Cosmos Hub needs around the kind of application specific infrastructure that's required for the hub. And that's kind of what this council assembly system is supposed to do. And I'm going to be kind of posting a little bit more about this, but one thing I actually have been working on this week is kind of drawing out the accountability relationships between all of the specific parties, because the objective is to make sure that each of these entities is able to do their work effectively, and to make sure that that work is kind of scoped and resourced by the parties that are need that work to be executed. So like we need to create this feedback loop where parties that are doing the work are doing it in service of the people who are paying for the work and scoping it. It's a very delicate kind of organizational structure. I totally understand and respect the criticism that one of the main value props of a blockchain is to kind of automate specific functions that were previously, trust-based human relationships. But when you're talking about like the creation of new software products, it's really hard to specify and automate that effectively.
Definitely, I know what you mean about software products. I recall when we were launching in 2016, the first ICO we were doing in Eastern Europe, and it was a big pain in the ass to launch it. I remember that it was definitely not the same way. But then again, technology was different, and I don't know how we would have acted if we had the technology of today. I don't know if we were would to go all full stein decentralized, or if we would not. But not the point. If out of curiosity, if we were to live out the fact that smaller groups have a larger surface attack, of course the bigger the chain, the more secure it is, the more secure the group is, the more trust I kind of have if the majority is saying one thing. If we were to abstragate from that, in your opinion, in the future for blockchains, and I know you just mentioned the difficulties of writing software and the difficulties that come with it, but more or less, what would be the perfect blockchain governance model that you can currently think of? Not necessarily with today's technology. Maybe we could fantasize a little bit if you're okay with it. Up to you. You could use today's technology, or if you want to fantasize, let's fantasize. But I would love to hear your vision.
I'm all for highly automated processes. Well, maybe let me step back. So I get asked a lot about my kind of view on DAOs, and I think about chains as like one form of DAO, and I basically whenever I think about this, I have this kind of like I have like a 2x2 axis. On one axis is basically operational automation. So we do this all the time with our communications infrastructure, like Slack or Splitwise or Carta or whatever. There's things that allow us to more efficiently automate certain aspects of bureaucracy. And on the other axis is basically the automation of organizational purpose. And an entity with a highly automated organizational purpose is Bitcoin, for instance. It has a very ossified and clear purpose. It's digital gold. Because there's this strong shelling point around that purpose, it allows for a distributed set of actors to self-organize around that purpose and evaluate whether or not what they're doing is in service of the purpose. And I think that there's a lot to learn from projects like Bitcoin, from projects like Ethereum. I don't know that we're ever going to have that level of automation, particularly Bitcoin's kind of like pretty far out on either axis there. With the 2.0 paper, we are really for the first time stating what a potential purpose might be, or trying to kind of agree upon a purpose. And so over time, I would love to automate more facets of both the operational and kind of purposeful components. But we need to kind of like understand what those are in order to increase the level of automation. As far as to your original question, like how, what is my kind of ideal form of governance? I'm not sure that I have an ideal. I think that their governance should really be tailored to what the kind of utility and purpose of the machine is. However, I do think that there's some interesting ways to automate certain facets. I've been a big fan of the fork futures model for a long time. I've never seen it really implemented like in a way that seemed like incredibly successful, but I think that there's definitely something there. If anybody wants to know more about that, you should read Paul Stork's writings doing fork futures for Bitcoin. And yeah, I think we should definitely strive to have progressive automation and kind of hardening our processes in order to decrease certain aspects of discretionary power within the system.
For sure. And by the way, would you say that another way of looking at Bitcoin's purpose, you said be digital gold. Could you say that another way of looking at it is that Bitcoin's purpose was to distribute wealth from one place to another, from one group of people, sorry, to another?
That was certainly the effect that it had. I would say that that was the original purpose of proof of work, certainly. It was a distribution mechanism. However, I'm not totally sure I would say that that was the purpose, particularly long term when the subsidy runs out and Bitcoin becomes like much more of like a kind of industrial process that has like very small margins.
I see what you mean. I was just trying to see if it's possible to connect that also to, like, to governance models, I guess, distributing the wealth, power being more spread out. And you mentioned how you more or less envision not the perfect model, right? But some of the way we could move. What would you say today is the biggest stoppage in governments, especially in proof of stake systems? And primarily, what would you say is the biggest issue that we are facing, and how can we approach it? How should we approach it?
This is a great question. So I would say that the current incentive model for stakers is a little bit perverse. So there are some like incredibly talented and high performing validators that I don't think get recognition, proper compensation. I think one of the kind of good and bad things is that there's a strong incentive for validators to be kind of like marketing entities. I mean, even Citizen Cosmos, like you have a podcast. I think it's super valuable podcast, but that type of work I think like gets recognition. Whereas like doing audits on releases or having like nuanced like governance opinions, I don't think necessarily gets like the same level of recognition like from this delegation standpoint. So I think that's one of the flaws that we should kind of work towards improving. There's a bit more of this like popularity contest thing. And then just the Gini coefficient of the stake ratio. I am not very happy with the top 10 validators, like, I mean, really top 7 validators, like controlling the chain, particularly when Coinbase and Binance are just like not participating whatsoever. Like it feels like there's a lot of dead weight there. So that's something I would love to see more experiments around. I was really encouraged to see Juno's proportional subsidy that they're proposing. I think that there's some challenges with that methodology. Basically, they want to give smaller validators a small subsidy that's kind of like increasing as you go down. But I'm like very interested to see the results of that effort. And I think that there's like a lot more experiments that we could be trying there.
In your opinion, should we? I mean, you mentioned Binance and Coinbase, and there has been several and many, I think, and still will be discussions on what to do with those validators and how, as a chain, to act towards them. In your opinion, should we enforce and punish, or should we say no? We are a free market. If you guys come in here and you might not, you're playing by the rules kind of thing, but should we look, I mean, the question is this: should we enforce and punish, and regardless if it's Binance and Coinbase or a podcast validator, or should we strive to find models where the market, and let the market kind of decide what's going to happen, let it flow economically?
Yeah, I'm pretty strongly in favor of the latter. When you say let the market kind of decide, I think there are policies that can be implemented or architectures that end up having an impact on the market, but singling out specific entities and saying that you're not allowed in the system or you're being taxed or whatever, I think it feels very discretionary. Like, okay, now we have to decide what an exchange means, what that is. So is somebody who's like doing OTC trades like from their validator, like are they an exchange? And it just becomes, now there's this whole like dimension of political dimension to this that just wasn't there before. I mean, the best thing that we can do, in my opinion, is just make centralized exchanges irrelevant. Like just build a 10x better product on chain. And that's kind of what the Atom 2.0 vision is attempting to do, is like really make it so that all of the most interesting activities happening on chain and there aren't any UX sacrifices that you're making there.
It's interesting. You mentioned before as well the validators and podcast being a validator. And to be honest, I mean, we only recently started to talk about that we actually validate. And it wasn't since the beginning that we started to validate. It was a very, very big journey to go to that. And
Yeah. And I don't mean to single you out there.
No. You're correct. I think it was perfect. It was a perfect example. I just want to say, I think for us, it's not about like a competition. It's more about actually what we spoke about. About hey, we're an educational validator. We also develop. We also like developing a game right now and so on and so forth. But for us, it was more about education, communication, bringing people together and trying to spread that. But it's good, and I think people should question more and more that. In my opinion, I think. Ecosystem developers are certainly not because I consider us to be an ecosystem developer and in a lot of terms, and I don't think we should be the only people who validate chains, for sure not. There should be builders, as in pure builders who build that code firsthand, probably.
Actually, question: who do you think is the most underrated validator?
That's a very good fucking question. It's a very, you mean in the Cosmos Hub or a specific name?
On the Cosmos Hub, if you have one, yeah.
Ooh, if I can, let me do this like cheeky style. Let me go open min scan. Wait, I'm gonna do it properly. Wait. Open min scan. Oh,
You can also come back to it at the end if you want.
No. Wait, now I have to do it. Wait. I like this question. It's a good question. I like it a lot. Let's do it together. Wait, let's go validator style.
I would actually love to know a lot of validators' answer to that question. Like, we doing more one-ups. Like, you all should pay attention to this validator.
Okay, so let me try to go from the bottom without any particular order. I'm just going to say the ones that are, in my opinion, should not be at the bottom. Dragon Stake have done, in my opinion, a lot of work since the very beginning, and I don't think they should be at the bottom for sure. They don't deserve to be there. Broin Bro are a new validator, but I know what they are and I know what they do. They might still be like building, they might still be building momentum, but I know these guys are worth a lot more than they are there. Sentinel is a tricky one. Sentinel is a very tricky one, but tricky. Who else? There is some that I don't know for sure, but let me go more up. Wait. God, people are gonna hate me for this. There is a lot. Jabi, for example. There is. Oh, wait. I want to go more. Staken for sure.
I've been interacting with Pupmos a little bit recently, and they are pretty excellent. It's way at the bottom.
Yes. Also, actually, I don't know them that well, but I've seen them before higher. And Cosmic Validator, I think, if I'm not. Oh no, not Cosmic. I'm sorry to single them out, but it wasn't them that I wanted to say. It was one that fell out. It was Cosmos Spaces. I think what they do is also interesting. Yes, they might not be, but they're doing a lot of work, and I don't know. There is a lot, man. There is like, now that you asked that, now that I'm looking at it, there is like some that are at the top that I'm not sure should be at the top, and some that are at the bottom that I definitely should not be at the bottom. In my opinion, I'll tell you what I would like, and I'm sorry again, everybody who's now gonna hate me, but I hope they will not. I think I would love to see more balanced validator set where, let's say, we have exchanges, we have builders, of course, primarily builders, we have ecosystem developers, we have maybe ecosystem developers that are focused pure on marketing, for example, not like us, but let's say maybe like more like CryptoCito, for example. And we are very good friends, but I think we need those guys as well. We have to have them. They make a very solid point and they bring a lot of attention. But I think it should be more balanced out. I think a problem now that we have a very specific set of validators which was created a long time ago, and it doesn't feel like the power is balanced in this set of validators. Again, this is a personal take. Sorry, people, but that's what I believe.
We've been doing this thing on the Cosmos Hub forum where validators are invited to just like talk about their service, give a little bit of a breakdown on their setup and their kind of philosophy. So I encourage everybody to take a look at that and like choose some cool validators. There's some great ones out there that aren't getting enough love.
Yeah, for sure. And where is that when you mention on the Cosmos forum, or you can? Oh, the forum. Sorry.
Yep.
I misheard you. Sorry, Sam. I heard forum. I apologize. So yeah, I also encourage people to definitely do that. And I think what we haven't done is we haven't actually added our philosophy to the profile on the forum. So we should for sure talk a little bit more about that. It does show a lot. But Sam, before we like start to wrap it up, a couple of questions I do still have for you. Before I go into the blitz that I will wrap up with, that I will ask you with, there's one question I didn't ask you about. About chemistry. I have a lot of my life connected with chemistry. And my question is, when cocaine synthesizer at home?
Wow.
When is it going to happen? Not when Binance. When are we going to synthesize cocaine home? Finally. When is that stuff going to move like that?
Great question. I mean, the starting materials are like a little bit hard to come by. Also, to be honest, it's like hard to get your hands on like laboratory equipment these days. I feel like it's harder today than it was like 20 years ago. There's just less people, it's less available, it's like more regulated. So I don't know. I feel like it's getting more and more distant. It's not getting closer, you know?
Interesting. I know it's an uncomfortable question, but it was, to level out the validator talk. And it's an interesting topic. I think it's a topic that should be more out there. Anyways, quick blitz to wrap it up with. Give me 3 projects outside the top 20, and please don't say Cosmos, that you are interested in terms of what they're building and doing. It excites you, not because somebody needs to go and buy them, God no, but because it's interesting to technologically.
3 crypto projects outside of Cosmos. So like ETH based or otherwise.
Whatever, we are decentralization maxis in Citizen Cosmos, so whatever you feel like.
Well, I mean, I can kind of rep a couple projects I'm like quasi associated with. It's maybe a bit of a cop out answer, but I do some writing with this organization called Other Internet, and I highly encourage everybody to take a look at that. So work with Billy, this NFT gallery called Folia, and I think the artwork there is excellent. But projects that I'm not associated with, I've been chatting a little bit with this kind of game engine organization called 0x Park, and I think they're doing some extremely cool on-chain zero knowledge kind of game development. Outside of Cosmos, I'm pretty close friends with Kia Kreutler, who's driving a lot of the Gnosis multisig development forward, and I'm like a big fan of kind of how they think about DAOs and their kind of thought leadership in the space. I mean, I've definitely drawn a lot of inspiration from like Maker and particularly the kind of debates that they've had recently about their governance processes, which I think are very nuanced and challenging. I don't know. There's so much out there.
It's good. I see what you mean. I understand. It's totally like poof, the world is crazy. What about 2 things? Give me 2 things that I mean, we have mentioned probably 10% of what I wanted to ask you about, but like, you do a lot. What are the 2 things in your daily life that keep you motivated to do those things that you do?
One is crypto has this kind of incredible quality where you can turn ideas into like real things by typing keys on your keyboard. Like it's like a magic wand kind of. And that is something that's still incredible to me, is that you can introduce primitives that and just ideas that kind of create like emergent organization with like such a powerful tool. So that's one. Yeah, I think the other is probably just the amount and like density of learning that I'm just like learning things every single day. And that's what ultimately drew me into the space, was just I just felt like I was learning more working in crypto, and the amount that you can learn in like any possible domain, like the intersections between these things is just absolutely incredible. I think that's like a huge opportunity for people who are just interested and excited to continue to learn like myself.
Last one person that you recommend to, it doesn't matter if it's GitHub, Twitter, Medium, Scuttlebutt account, whatever, one person that you recommend everybody to follow and you think that it will help them to whatever they do, in whatever they can be doing, to concentrate more on the good things. And
like contemporary living today kind of thing.
It could be an account. Well, I know accounts out there that are definitely not alive anymore, but still updated somehow. But not many. I do know of some.
Well, okay, this is not like contemporary, but I do think that there's like a couple pretty underrated cypherpunk accounts like people that are you find in the cypherpunk mailing list that like just don't really get as much attention as other, like Timothy May, for instance. I think is just like absolutely brilliant. I actually corresponded with him like very briefly right before he passed away, but he's just kind of like not given as much like love. And I guess if I had to recommend one account that's maybe in the same spirit, it would be Suzuha Probably the most badass cypherpunk account. Dystopia Breaker is the actual handle.
Love it.
Shout out to Suzuha.
Nice. We will definitely include these links, man, for people to follow because it's a very cool account, actually. Man, Sam, there's a lot more I want to talk to you about, and I know, but we would try to keep them to an hour. And I don't know if I did manage to ask you what, but I don't know if you want to mention anything about Atom 2.0 that you would like everybody to hear. Please do. Otherwise, I guess next time. But please, if you have something to mention that I didn't ask you about, please do.
Yeah, I'll mention something about Atom 2.0. I mean, this project is something that nobody has ever done before. Nobody has tried to, as a community, debate and kind of agree upon a new purpose for a multi-billion-dollar network. Like, that's just not a thing that has been done. And we're doing it all out in the open. It's definitely pretty messy, but like, it's kind of a beautiful thing. And I definitely feel like I'm part of history, like participating in this. It's not going to be perfect from day one. We just kind of need to acknowledge that. But like, the objective is to get something that we're pretty happy with at the top level and create this cycle where we're learning and improving and making the system better as we go. That's how I kind of think about the Atom 2.0 paper. And there's a lot of detail in there because, I don't know, kind of felt like you had to include a lot of detail. Otherwise, people would ask for more. And I've been caught in this like in between world where it's like some people are like, this is too specific. And some people are like, this is too vague. And it's like, okay, well, there's no solution there. Yeah, we should just kind of think about like directionally where we're going and like, is this going to improve over time? And I hope that we're putting forward something that gets both of those things right.
Definitely. I think all of the goals are aligned here in terms of, we are all here to make things better, to learn. And well, majority of us, I guess. And we will all going that way, hopefully. And it will all grow. And for sure, I definitely have a belief in that for sure, which is maybe not the correct thing, the word to use after all the conversation, belief. But still, I think it's a good word sometimes.
Well, this is a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you very, 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 very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Sam, please don't hang up yet, but until next time, bye.
Bye.
This content was created by the Citizen Cosmos Validator. If you enjoyed it, please support us by delegating to Citizen Cosmos and help us to create more educational content.